I knew I was already screwed the moment my shoe caught the corner of the elevator, and I spilled lukewarm coffee down the front of my cardigan. 8:59 a.m. Hair frizzed from the rain, breath hitching, blouse clinging in places it shouldn't, because of course the AC had to be broken today too. I'd just handed off my lunch, my entire lunch, to a guy hunched outside in a neon vest who looked like he hadn't eaten in 2 days. He smiled like I gave him gold. I didn't even get his name. Just shrugged, said, "Turkey with extra pickles," and dashed inside. Then I ran into Cheryl. "The new CEO is waiting. Don't screw this up," she hissed, loud enough for the rest of the floor to hear. I barely had time to set my tote down before she was circling me like I was a dog that peed on her rug. "Honestly, it's like you try to make us look unprofessional. We've got board members in today." My face was hot. Not from embarrassment. No, I was way past that stage in this office. Just a dull heat that simmered in the pit of my stomach every time Cheryl opened her Botoxed mouth. I could see her nails clicking her phone screen, already crafting some condescending Slack message about team image or lateness reflects poorly on performance. Same old script. And just real quick. If you're listening to this, 97% of people forget to hit subscribe or like, and honestly, it means everything to the team. Helps us keep telling stories like this that way too many people relate to. So yeah, thanks for that. Anyway, back to the circus. The worst part wasn't the coffee, wasn't even Cheryl's nasal screech in front of the entire floor. It was the fact that I cared, that after 3 years of busting my ass, staying late, fixing Cheryl's half-baked spreadsheets, bringing the damn donuts to every quarterly meeting, I still let her voice get under my skin. I knew exactly what was happening today. We all did. New CEO. Big presentation. Cheryl had the whole team lined up like backup dancers in her sad little power musical. She even sent out a color-coordinated outfit memo. Neutrals, no bold prints, as if wearing beige would help mask the chaos under her management. She pulled me aside before the meeting started. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice. "Just stay quiet today. No questions. No jumping in. This is optics, okay? Let the senior staff shine." I was senior staff. I'd onboarded half the people in that room, including Eric, who'd called me at 11 p.m. last week in a panic about the metrics deck, and then took full credit for it Monday morning. But yeah, sure. Let the real talent shine. I nodded, said nothing, like always. Cheryl patted my shoulder like I was a temp who brought the wrong coffee order. "You're a team player. I appreciate that. We'll circle back after." Translation? She'd use my data slides, my talking points, and my calm handling of the glitchy web portal. Then forget my name by lunch. The boardroom looked like a showroom. Clean lines, catered fruit tray, 2 floral arrangements someone definitely expensed, and would later pretend came from their personal account. Cheryl was already posturing by the whiteboard, tossing around phrases like strategic pivot and synergistic momentum. She adjusted her blazer like she was about to interview for Shark Tank. The new CEO was running late, 20 minutes late, which only made Cheryl's performance more frantic. She paced the hallway, adjusted her lipstick in the glass door's reflection, and muttered something about channeling executive energy. Meanwhile, I sat at the end of the table, half invisible, watching everyone scramble to look important. That's the thing about this place. Nobody wants to do the work. They just want to look like they did. I leaned back in my chair and took a breath. Something about today felt off, and not just the soggy socks or empty stomach. Maybe it was how calm I felt, despite Cheryl's manic energy, or how the new guy I'd trained last quarter, Mark, sweet kid, fresh out of school, glanced at me and whispered, "Why aren't you up there too?" I didn't have an answer, not one that wouldn't burn the building down. So I smiled, shrugged, looked down at the coffee stain, and thought about the guy on the curb. He'd said thank you like it meant something. Nobody in that boardroom ever had. Cheryl clapped her hands twice like a kindergarten teacher about to wrangle snack time. "Okay, team, this is it. Game faces on. Remember, first impressions are everything. We need polish, poise, and presence." She stretched that last word like she was teaching a TED Talk on how to fake authority. I was standing half in, half out of the circle, sipping water to distract from the fact that my stomach was growling like a caged animal. Cheryl, as usual, positioned herself dead center, front and blonde, flanked by her two favorite parrots, Connor and Elise. Connor, who once called an API an appliance, and Elise, whose biggest contribution to our last campaign was picking the color of the PowerPoint gradient. "Dusty coral," she said with conviction, like that was the hinge the whole quarter would swing on. Cheryl held up a clipboard like she was reading nominations for an award show. "Connor, you'll lead the product overview. Elise, you've got financial forecasts. Mark, walk them through the culture and ops highlights. Remember to smile. I'll introduce us and close with strategic vision." She beamed, proud of herself for assigning all the easy parts to people she could control. "And you," she turned to me, already shifting her voice into that sugar-coated register she used when pretending to care. "You just hang back, keep the notes organized, and if the projector goes down, you know what to do." My throat was dry. "That's it?" Cheryl's smile twitched. "You're great with logistics. Back-end strength is just as important. This is about optics, not overexposure." She gave a little wink like we were sharing an inside joke. We weren't. I wanted to tell her that I'd written 60% of the talking points they were about to parrot, that Mark's culture and ops walkthrough was my onboarding process, my documentation, my streamlined policy update Cheryl had called too wordy in February, and then quietly rolled out as her own idea in March. I wanted to remind her I was the one who caught the duplicate vendor invoices last quarter, before finance embarrassed themselves in front of the board. But all I did was nod, because that's what I was trained to do here. Stay useful, stay quiet, and stay out of the photos. Mark caught up to me as everyone dispersed. "You're not going up with us?" he asked, his brow pinching like a kid realizing Santa might be fake. "Nope," I said, trying to smile like it didn't sting. "Just here to keep the wheels turning." "But you taught me half this stuff," he said. I shrugged. "Maybe next time." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I could see the confusion warping his face. He wasn't naive, but he hadn't yet been broken in by the way this place worked. He didn't know yet that merit doesn't matter when you don't wear the right shoes, laugh at the right jokes, or flirt just enough in the elevator. Back in the boardroom, Cheryl rehearsed her intro like she was auditioning for corporate theater. "We're thrilled to welcome leadership today and showcase the evolution of our team. We've grown, we've adapted, and we're ready for bold transformation." She turned to Elise. "Keep your hands loose, no jazz hands. Mark, more eye contact. Connor, don't interrupt anyone this time." I slipped into the side seat like furniture, laptop open, notes queued, backup drive ready. The boardroom hum felt like static, everyone buzzing, fidgeting, checking their teeth in phone reflections. Nobody looked at me. They never did unless something broke. The irony was that every time someone's file crashed, or the printer jammed, or the coffee pot overflowed, it was me they called. But put me in a room where real credit was handed out, suddenly I didn't exist. Cheryl did one last mirror check and pulled out her citrus-scented Executive Presence hand lotion. "Remember," she said to the group, "this isn't about facts. It's about feeling. Impress him. Make him believe we're the future." I watched her smear lotion onto her hands with the same precision she used to erase people from conversations. All flash, no substance. That was the motto around here. Didn't matter who actually made the engine run, just who polished the hood. And yet, something about today felt unsteady, like there was a crack forming beneath all the polish, a hairline fracture in Cheryl's control. And I couldn't explain why, but the more she talked, the more certain I felt that she was about to trip over the very ladder she climbed. 10 minutes past the hour and the executive aura Cheryl kept bragging about was starting to sweat through her blazer. The rest of the team sat rigid in their chairs, gripping their note cards like lifeboats on a sinking ship. I kept my eyes on the empty seat at the head of the table, its pristine leather surface untouched, glaringly absent. The room had that artificial hush, like everyone was trying too hard not to breathe too loudly, not to shuffle papers, not to ruin the illusion that we were important and ready. Cheryl was on her third lap around the perimeter of the room, heels clicking like gunshots on the polished tile. "He's probably being briefed," she said, mostly to herself. "Or delayed in transit, or maybe he's waiting to make an entrance." Power move. Classic CEO energy. She laughed, a brittle sound that didn't match her eyes, which were scanning the hallway like she expected someone to burst in with a red carpet and confetti cannon. Connor whispered something to Elise. Elise giggled. Cheryl snapped her fingers. "Focus, people. Eyes on me. If we look chaotic, he'll feel chaos. We project cohesion, competence, vision." Mark shot me a look across the table, that awkward, nervous grin again, like he knew something was off but couldn't say it out loud. I just nodded toward the empty seat. More minutes passed, my stomach twisted, not from nerves, but from that hollow space food should have filled. The water I'd been sipping sat heavy. I watched Cheryl check her phone, then her smartwatch, then both again as if they'd magically synced with the CEO's brainwaves. Finally, the conference room door opened, but it was just Rachel from reception, clipboard in hand, eyes wide. She tiptoed in and whispered something into Cheryl's ear. Cheryl's smile froze. "What do you mean he's already here?" she hissed under her breath. "Where?" Rachel stepped back. "He's walking the floors? Said he's doing an informal tour before introductions?" A beat passed, then another. "What kind of tour?" Cheryl's voice cracked, just enough for everyone to notice. Rachel looked at the floor. "Incognito. No one was supposed to know." Cheryl blinked, and for the first time all day, her mouth didn't know where to land. "He's undercover?" "Just observing," Rachel said. "Wanted to get a feel for the place. Said it tells him more than any slide deck." I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Cheryl cleared her throat hard. "Well, That would have been useful information this morning. She turned back to us, smoothing her blazer with jerky hands. Okay, no one panic. This is fine. He's doing some hands-on evaluation. It's very modern. Shows he's engaged. Dynamic. Mark mouthed, "Whoa." Connor immediately sat up straighter, fixing his tie. Elise blotted her lip gloss with a napkin and muttered something about regretting the fake eyelashes. Cheryl pivoted. We stay calm, professional. He could walk in any moment, so be ready, be perfect, and for God's sake, smile like you just got promoted. I watched her pace again, eyes darting towards the door every few seconds. Whatever illusion she'd tried to build with her rehearsed confidence, it was cracking like old plaster under the weight of not knowing where the real power was now. Out in the hallway, someone laughed. A casual, deep laugh. Not forced, not fake. The kind that makes people lean in without knowing why. Cheryl froze mid-step. Another beat, and then silence. The team's heads slowly turned towards the door like synchronized swimmers waiting for a cue. I didn't look at the door. I looked at Cheryl, because whatever was about to walk through it wasn't the man she'd been preparing to seduce with buzzwords and executive aura. And judging by the tight pull at the corners of her mouth, part of her already knew it. That morning felt like a dozen others. Gray, wet, already behind schedule. I was pulling into the parking lot with one bar left on my fuel light, cursing myself for skipping breakfast again, when I saw him. Sitting on the curb, legs stretched out, reflective vest soaked through at the shoulders. He looked like he'd been there a while. There was a paper bag near his feet and a coffee cup, empty, lid dented, like someone had stepped on it. I'd seen him before, or people like him anyway. Guys the building never noticed unless they blocked a walkway or made the lobby smell like sweat. There's this thing people do, pretend they don't see. Eyes flick past like you're dodging guilt. But something about this one made me stop. Maybe it was the way he wasn't asking for anything. No sign, no cup out, no look of expectation. Just calm. Like the whole city buzzed around him and he'd made peace with being invisible. I parked and grabbed my tote, double-checked that my blouse wasn't inside out again, and reached for the paper bag I'd packed the night before. Turkey on rye, an orange, a bottled water. I stood there for a second, debating. My stomach was already growling. It had been a long week and I was running on caffeine and sarcasm. But then I looked at him again. His head was tilted toward the sky like he was trying to remember what the sun felt like. I crossed the lot. "Hey," I said, voice awkward. "You eaten?" He turned to me slowly. Up close, his face was weathered, but not worn down. Clear eyes, no desperation, just tired. He smiled. "Not today." I handed him the bag. "Turkey, hope that works." His eyebrows rose like he hadn't expected the offer to be real. He took the bag gently, like it might fall apart in his hands. "I appreciate this," he said. "A lot." I shifted my weight, unsure what to say next. "We've all been there," I mumbled. "Figured you could use it more than I could." He looked at me for a long second. "What's your name?" "Emily." He nodded. "That's a good name. You work in that building?" "Yeah," I said, nodding toward the glass tower behind me. "Middle floor? Middle everything?" He chuckled. "Middle's an underrated place to be. That's where the real stuff gets done." I smiled, surprised by the comment. He held up the water bottle like a toast. "You know, I've been watching people come in and out of there all week. fast walkers, loud phone talkers, you're the first one who looked me in the eye. I didn't know what to do with that. I wasn't trying to make a statement. It just seemed human. Well, I said, checking my watch, my boss is probably halfway through a meltdown by now. Gotta go. He nodded. Good luck with your day, Emily. You too. I turned, trotted up the steps, and didn't look back. Figured that was the end of it. Just one small thing in a long, messy day. Didn't even notice the smudge on the vest that said EM Holdings. Didn't know the name. Didn't care. I just thought he looked hungry. And I was late. Again. If someone had told me then that I'd see him again in less than an hour, standing at the head of our boardroom table, in a suit that probably cost more than my month's rent, I would have laughed in their face. But at that moment, all I felt was a weird sort of calm. Like maybe, just maybe, that small moment had mattered more than I realized. And somewhere behind the hunger, the rain, and the reflective vest, something had looked back at me with eyes that weren't just tired. They were watching. The door opened with a quiet click. No grand announcement, no pageantry, just the subtle shift of energy that makes a room inhale all at once. I was still halfway focused on fixing the formatting on Mark's bullet points when I felt the change. Something cold and still settled into the space like a fog. Every neck craned, every chair creaked, every rehearsed smile began to twitch with uncertainty. And there he was, tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, tie like it had been aligned with a ruler, hair slicked back, rain gone, vest replaced with precision. He carried no briefcase, no assistant trailed behind. Just him, standing in the doorway like gravity obeyed him now. I didn't breathe. It was the man. From the curb. Only not. The calm stillness I'd seen on the sidewalk hadn't vanished. It had just shifted into something sharper, more deliberate. He scanned the room like a man who had already made decisions. His expression didn't change when he locked eyes with Cheryl. She stood frozen for a beat too long, lips parting into a smile that had more teeth than warmth. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you, she chirped, stepping forward like a game show host trying to recover after forgetting a contestant's name. He didn't respond, not with words, just a slow blink. One corner of his mouth twitched, almost like disappointment. Then he looked past her, to Elise, then Connor, then Mark, and then me. My fingers hovered uselessly over the keyboard. My heart? Loud. So loud I was sure someone would comment on it. He held my gaze just long enough for the silence to ache. Then he moved further into the room. Cheryl stammered. Would you like to sit? Or start with introductions? We're so excited to. He held up one hand. She stopped talking like someone had unplugged her vocal cords. He turned slowly, deliberately, to the head of the table. The chair had been left open, pristine, untouched, because Cheryl insisted it was respectful to leave it for him, like a throne. Now he sat, smooth, unrushed, like he belonged there before the furniture was even delivered. The silence stretched. He adjusted his cuff. Then finally, good morning. His voice was lower than I expected. Calm, measured, not tired, not angry, just observant. Cheryl laughed too loudly. We've all been waiting, very eagerly, for your arrival. I'm Cheryl Watkins, department lead, and this team— I've already met the team, he interrupted, voice like a blade through silk. She blinked. Oh, wonderful. Yes. Well, We're ready to walk you through our latest progress. We've prepared a brief—" He didn't move, just stared. "No need. I've been observing for a while now." That landed like a dropped glass. Cheryl's smile faltered. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her blazer. Connor's eyes flicked to his notes. Elise started quietly sweating glitter. Mark looked like he was doing mental math. And I sat still. My hands were cold. No one dared speak. The new CEO, my lunch recipient, my curbside mystery, sat there like the room was his microscope slide. And he was done pretending otherwise. His gaze flicked to the binder Cheryl had placed front and center. Color-coded, laminated tabs. He didn't touch it. The tension turned solid. You could chew it. Then he said, flatly, "Before we begin, I have a few questions." No one blinked, especially not Cheryl. But I did, because I knew. He wasn't asking to learn. He was asking to confirm what he already knew, and that made all the air feel sharp. He didn't ask anything from the laminated binder, didn't request a deck or a tour or a mission statement printed in faux gold foil. He just leaned back in the chair, calm as still water, eyes scanning each of us like a man in no rush, because time bends for people like that. Then, without warning, he lifted his hand and pointed, right at me. "What's her role here?" The entire room pivoted. All heads turned like dominoes falling in sequence. I felt my breath seize somewhere behind my ribcage. Not because I was scared, but because finally someone had noticed. Cheryl blinked, actually blinked, 3 times in rapid succession like her brain buffering. "Oh, she's support staff," she said, with that fake laugh undertone she used when talking to HR about holiday budgets. "Sort of back end, ops adjacent, logistics stuff." There it was. My entire contribution to this place reduced to logistics stuff. The CEO's expression didn't change, but a flicker, barely there, passed behind his eyes. Like a switch was toggled, quiet but irreversible. He said. That was all. Not a question, not a challenge. Just and suddenly Cheryl was talking again, fast and bright and hollow. "She's very reliable, of course," she added quickly, "always on top of the little things. Scheduling, admin, kind of a behind-the-scenes person." I almost laughed. Behind the scenes. As if the presentations she claimed credit for had built themselves. As if every team process she was about to showcase hadn't been debugged, documented, and delivered by the same support staff she now waved off like a helpful Roomba. The room stayed silent. I glanced across the table. Mark's eyes were wide. Elise bit her bottom lip. Connor was doing that thing where he fake scribbled notes to avoid being noticed. The CEO didn't look at them. He kept looking at me, like he was taking a mental photo. And suddenly, I remembered what he'd said on the curb, that I was the first person who looked him in the eye. Now he was returning the favor. "Support staff," he repeated, still facing me. His tone was unreadable, but it wasn't disinterest. If anything, it felt like he was holding something back. A verdict. A truth too sharp for right now. Cheryl nodded like it was settled. "Exactly." Another pause. Then he slowly turned back to the table, resting his hands on the wood, fingertips steepled. "Interesting." That word had weight, enough to make Cheryl's smile twitch. I sat perfectly still, but inside, something had shifted. Not much, just enough to feel it uncoil, a quiet, ancient kind of vindication. The kind you don't speak aloud, because then it might evaporate. I could feel my pulse in my teeth, He hadn't defended me. He hadn't corrected her. But he'd seen me. And maybe that's all it takes sometimes to tilt a room off its axis. Mark dropped his pen. No one picked it up. The air in the room had changed. Everyone felt it. Cheryl tried to push forward. "We've got a quick intro video if you'd like." But it was already too late. The spotlight had moved, and it wasn't on her. The room never really recovered from that question. Every move after felt like a cover-up for something no one could name yet. Cheryl tried to force the meeting back into the box, smiled wider, voice turned sugary again, hands fluttering to her binder like a stage magician about to pull rabbits. "So, if we're ready to dive into the quarterly highlights?" But the CEO didn't nod, didn't smile. He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve and said, almost lazily, "Before that, I'd like to review the team's performance breakdowns, specifically back-end workflows, operations continuity, internal coordination metrics." Cheryl froze, just enough for me to notice. Then she did what she always did when caught flat-footed, stalled. "Oh, sure, yes, of course. We've got those." She rifled through her glossy, over-tabbed binder like the answers might magically fall out. "I think page 18 or maybe 26. He didn't wait. From the leather folio on the table beside him, he pulled out a small stack of printouts, precise, crisp, bound with a silver clip, documents that had never been part of the presentation. My heart skipped. I knew those documents. I made those documents. Every spreadsheet, every workflow, every task matrix, structured, clean, labeled. My name was watermarked in the footer of each page, quietly, subtly, just in case someone tried to pass them off as their own, like they had before. He flipped the first page and held it up with 2 fingers. "This routing protocol," he said. "The escalation logic that flags delayed onboarding flows before they hit HR compliance thresholds. Who built it?" The room stayed still. Mark looked at me. Cheryl cleared her throat. "That was a team effort?" He lowered the page and looked directly at her. "Which team?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "Elise?" he asked without turning. "Connor?" They didn't answer. Mark, God bless him, quietly said, "Emily built that. She trained me on it." I stared at the table. My face burned, but not with shame. It was something else, a fire lit in the gut, the quiet kind, the good kind. The CEO gave the smallest nod. He held up another page. "This quarterly resource mapping?" he asked. "The model that cut vendor overhead by 12%? Silence. "That was hers too," Mark mumbled. "She made the first draft in January, I think." "November," I said before I could stop myself, "but it was fine-tuned in January." He turned toward me, didn't smile, just gave a slight tilt of his head. Recognition, not praise. Then he spread the pages like playing cards in front of him, each one with my work, my name, my fingerprints. Cheryl was pale now, the kind of pale that starts around the mouth and works its way up like frostbite. Her fingers curled on the table's edge. The room had gone colder. No one touched their notes. No one dared interrupt. "These documents," he said calmly, "are the backbone of your department's functionality. Not the decks. Not the pitch buzzwords. This." He tapped the stack. "This is infrastructure. This is what keeps things from breaking." No one argued. He turned back to me. "How long have you been here?" 3 years, I said, steady now. "Next month." Cheryl opened her mouth, maybe to claim she'd been mentoring me or managing me directly, but he raised a single finger, and she swallowed whatever it was. 3 years. 3 years of doing work no one saw. Until now. He collected the documents, tapped them into a neat pile, and placed them deliberately in front of him. Not filed away, not discarded, front and center. And just like that, the room knew. The new CEO didn't need a presentation to understand who ran the ship. He'd already read the blueprints. He didn't touch the binder Cheryl had spent all morning polishing like it was Excalibur. Didn't even glance at the color-coded tabs she insisted everyone reference. Instead, he placed the stack of my workflows squarely in front of him and laced his finger over it like a man about to preach scripture. Then he leaned back, scanning the room, and said with quiet finality, "I've spent the last 2 weeks touring this building, incognito." You could feel the ripple roll across the table like a cold wave. Cheryl's mouth opened slightly, then shut. Connor shifted in his seat like someone had lit a match under him. Elise froze mid-fidget. "I came in through the service entrance. I wore what some of you might call non-client-facing attire," he said, lips twitching at the phrase. "A vest, worn shoes, no badge, no eye contact." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words dropped like slow, heavy coins. "In that time, I had more conversations in freight elevators than I did in conference rooms. Watched how your people treat the overnight cleaning crew, the interns who refill coffee filters, the mailroom guy you all pretend not to see." He looked directly at Cheryl now. "Or the employee who sits quietly in every meeting, takes every note, patches every mess, and somehow remains support staff, despite doing the work of 3 managers." Her face flushed pink, then white, then settled on a sort of translucent panic. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. And I listened. The room was dead still. I listened to jokes made when you thought no one important was around. I watched whose names got left off invites, who got credit in front of clients, who got handed blame when deliverables missed the mark. He paused just long enough to let the silence echo. "Last Thursday," he continued, voice cool, "I passed a janitor in the hallway. He dropped a mop. No one helped him. 2 employees actually stepped over it. No one spoke. Later that same day, I overheard someone say, and I quote," he turned, eyes narrowing in on Cheryl like a targeting system, "If they're not revenue-facing, they're replaceable." Cheryl's face didn't move, but her left hand clenched so tight the veins popped. He repeated it, slower. "If they're not revenue-facing, they're replaceable." He let it hang, not as a question, but as a statement on trial. Behind him, one of the board members, Miriam, usually unreadable, shifted in her chair and exchanged a look with the man beside her. A silent message passed. I didn't catch the full meaning, but I didn't need to. The walls were moving. He continued. That phrase stuck with me, because when I looked at the back-end reports, the workflows, the actual operations driving this company, guess what I found? He tapped the documents again. Once. Most of it wasn't built by your revenue-facing staff. Another tap. Most of it wasn't even reviewed by them. He finally looked back at me. Not smiling, not grandstanding, just there. Most of it came from someone no one in this room has apparently bothered to promote or credit. I held his gaze, said nothing. My stomach felt hollow but steady, like I was standing in the eye of a very long storm that had finally reached the coast. Mark glanced at Cheryl, then quickly looked away. Connor rubbed the back of his neck, Even Elise's lashes weren't fluttering anymore. The air was heavy now, charged, electric, like just before lightning hits the same spot twice. Cheryl cleared her throat, tried to salvage something. "We're a fast-paced team. Maybe. We missed a few internal recognition opportunities, but..." He held up a hand. Flat, firm, no further. "No need. I've seen everything I need to see." The finality in his voice didn't need translation. The shift had already begun. They just didn't know how deep it would cut yet. But I did. He didn't draw it out. No monologue, no corporate buzzwords, just 3 words delivered clean and sharp. Effective immediately, restructure. Every muscle in Cheryl's body locked. The words didn't register at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, like her brain was trying to buy time to rewrite reality. But she didn't speak. Couldn't. The board stayed silent. Miriam gave a single nod, like she'd been waiting for the shoe to drop all week. The CEO, no longer the guy in the vest, but the man now steering the entire ship, unclipped a smaller folder from his folio. He flipped it open. Paper, not digital. Intentional. Department lead position is dissolved. Oversight will transition to internal operations leadership. A new framework starts Monday. We're moving away from impression management and into infrastructure-first culture. Cheryl finally found her voice. I don't understand. My role, this entire team, I built..." He didn't look up. "Your role no longer aligns with the direction we're moving." Her lips parted, but no words came out. There was no defense she could mount, no spreadsheet to hide behind. The very metrics she weaponized had been rewritten in a language she didn't speak. He closed the folder. "Elise, you'll report to internal comms until reassignments are finalized. Connor, analytics only. No client-facing duties until you complete compliance training. Mark," he looked up, "you'll shadow Emily starting this week." I blinked. Wait, what? He turned to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "We're offering you a formal leadership development track," he said. "Strategic operations needs someone who actually knows how the system runs, not just what it looks like in a deck." I opened my mouth, then shut it. Not because I didn't believe him, but because for the first time, I didn't have to explain myself, didn't have to prove it, defend it, fight for the seat I'd been quietly holding from the floor. "You built the spine," he continued. "You kept this place alive while others polished their resumes and rebranded each other's ideas." His eyes softened, just barely. Leadership recognizes leadership. There was no round of applause, no dramatic orchestral swell, just that sentence. And the silence that came after it, the kind that didn't feel empty, but earned. Cheryl stood, slowly, still in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she reached for her nameplate, the one with the embossed gold finish she'd had custom made. He stopped her. "Leave that." She froze. "It stays on the desk until the transition is complete. HR will reach out." Her face cracked just for a second. No screaming, no dramatic exit, just quiet defeat, the kind that hits when you realize the game changed and you never saw the new rules being written. She walked out, past the table, past the board, past me. I didn't look at her. I didn't have to. Later that afternoon, the sun broke through the clouds. I sat at the same conference table where I'd once been asked to hang back, laptop open, new badge clipped to my shirt. The chair next to me held a folder. My folder. This time, with my name at the top. not watermarked at the bottom. Across from me, Mark sat in quiet awe, flipping through onboarding tasks I used to do in the dark. Someone had removed Cheryl's coat from the back of her chair. Someone else had quietly set out a fresh notepad in front of me. No ceremony, no announcement. Just one woman sitting where she used to serve. And being seen, finally, without having to raise her voice. That was enough.